This is Roll Call for this edition of African Drums. The African drums are sounding.
Good evening and welcome to this evening's edition of African Drums. African Drums, as you know, is the television arm of the Cuffy 250 Committee, an organization dedicated to raising the consciousness of African Guyanese through education and self-improvement. This evening's program we have an interview with two very interesting ladies who came in as a result of the activities going on for the elections this season. Welcome, Dr. Dawn Stewart.
Thank you.
And Mrs. Marcia Johnson-Blanco.
Thank you.
Did I get that right?
Happy to be here, yes.
Okay. What we will do during the course of this interview is to hear a little bit about their exciting lives that got them to the point they are right now, but also a lot of the important, just snippets of the important work that they've been doing in the United States in terms of voter education and also other parts of the world in which they've been involved. So let me start off by asking them to give a little bit about themselves. Who is Dr. Dawn Stewart?
I'm actually just a product of Guyana. I am Guyanese, born in Guyana, and I went to Christchurch Secondary School, and from there I migrated to the United States, and from there I was allowed some extraordinary opportunities to which I'm grateful and blessed to have.
Well, I'm also a child of Guyana, a very proud one. I left Guyana when I was 11 years old, and I am now an attorney working in Washington, D.C. in the United States, and I do voting rights work. And that work has three main components. It's voter engagement, voter education, advocacy before the Congress, as well as state legislatures on voting rights issues, and also when they don't do what we would like them to do, litigation. As an attorney, it's always great to have that in your arsenal. And I'm just happy to be here around election time to talk about the work that I do in the United States and to explore how some of that could be translated to the Guyanese experience.
Okay, very good. Now, Dr. Dawn, you were being modest just now. Could you please expand a little bit and don't just stop there?
Oh, okay. I will try my best. I actually...
You didn't come from Christchurch directly to here. No,
I actually had the opportunity to be educated in the United States of America and played some significant roles in various organizations. In the Black Women's Roundtable, I served as a member, where we promoted voters' education, advocacy, and those types of issues. I also formed the Caribbean American International Collective, Inc., and that's a Caribbean organization that is addresses issues of Caribbean Americans in the United States, as well as we forged the bill along with Marcia and some other Caribbean Americans to have the Congress passed the bill for the National Caribbean Day, which is June 8th. And also we have the National Caribbean HIV/AIDS Day also. And so there are many initiatives that we worked on in the United States to move the Caribbean agenda forward. We also worked on the deportation issue of the Caribbean Americans in the United States. So the important thing is, I've learned, is how do you move legislation? How are you able to impact change and to bring about change in the society in which you are living in? I had the opportunity to work with the Department of Defense for many years as a nurse environmentalist. I served as an Air Force nurse in the early times, and so worked overseas. I was involved in Desert Storm, as many people may know, when America invaded in the Middle East. I was deployed there and served as an environmentalist in that capacity, and also was always advocating on behalf of the military, the soldiers, etc., etc.
Okay. Now that gets us a little closer. Coming to our situation here in Guyana, we have a lot of important ideas that we want to circulate, pass on to our viewers. One question that is always asked, and hopefully you can shed some light on it, and that is, why vote? Why vote? Could you give us your feelings on why people should vote? I'll ask one and then the other, so that we can have a collective wisdom here.
I think that's a universal question in any democracy. You look at who the leadership is, what the issues are that you care about. Is the leadership engaging you on those issues? Are they only talking to some people but not to me? And you ask yourself, why should I engage? And there's a simple answer and there's a complicated answer. The simple answer is, your vote is your voice. If you're not voting, you're not engaging in the democracy. But it's not just about voting. It's about having a continuous dialogue with elected officials. Elections are a point in time, but that should not be the only point in time in which you're engaged. And when someone is asking, why should I vote? It could be, I don't think that my vote will make a difference. Or it could be hiding, I don't even know how to engage. What do I need to do to be able to vote? So when someone typically asks that question, and a question that's asked in the U.S. as well as here, I asked, well, what do you think voting would do for you? And start having a dialogue and start engaging and getting beyond the paralysis of, it doesn't matter what I do, to not doing, sharing that not doing anything is in fact doing something because it's giving away your voice. And it may not be easy to get elected officials to engage you, but if you don't start at some point, then you really are not participating and doing your duty in your democracy to engage and get what you want. Nothing is given to you unless you ask for it. And voting is the beginning of that conversation.
Okay. Dr. Dawn?
I think it's important that we vote. The whole legacy of how the voting rights came about, when we weren't allowed to vote as a group women, and many persons fought for the right for us to vote, and so to enable us to have a voice in the decisions that are made on our behalf. Voting is an integral part that one should play in having your voice heard, having your issues heard, and having things done within the realm of where you would be able to be a healthy human being within your life circumstances as to what is it I want to see happen. How do I make the persons that I elect accountable for the issues that surround my community? How do I engage them? How am I able to make them understand what is of concern to me, rather than hear what they would do for me? Because hearing what they'll do for me may not be necessarily my concerns or the issues that are affecting my community, for example. So it's important, if, as Marcia said, if you choose not to have your voice heard, then how would someone be able to work on your behalf? And it doesn't only have to do with voting. It has to do beyond voting, of making someone that you elect accountable to ensure that the issues that you have voted upon, because those are the issues that are affecting you, are addressed, are heard, and they are beneficial to the community in which you would like to vote. But you must you should vote in order to be able to have a voice.
You must engage in the process. You talked about issues. What are some of the issues that are critical that are key based on your surveys and the information that you have on Guyana in terms of
the surveys that we've done surveys of 355 women and youths in Guyana, and we have found 10 major issues that keep recurring in every one of the regions that we've been to and surveyed, and we have only been able to look at 5 of the regions in Guyana. And what we did is narrowed it down to 5 major issues that we had the capacity to be able to address as the Guyana Women's Roundtable. And those 5 issues that we continuously heard throughout the journey was the issue of violence against women, teenage pregnancy, the healthcare system, the education system, and employment versus unemployment. And those are the issues that we wanted to engage our elected officials, or candidates, our prospective elected officials in. And in that vein, we started with the candidate issue forum that we had approximately 2 to 3 weeks ago. Unfortunately, only one group of candidates have attended so far. And those were trying to get the Guyanese population engaged in their candidates as to what exactly their concerns are. And so that's the first step of engagement with our candidates about the issues that impact our lives.
Now, you talked about, back up a little bit, the organization that you represent. Talk a little bit about specifically what they're doing in this election. The organization. What's the name of the organization?
The organization is CPIC Monique's Helping Hands, and that's an NGO based here in Guyana.
CPIC.
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 Monique's Caring Hands. And that's an organization based here in Guyana. And the organization has several hats on which we take care of the persons in Guyana. Our mission is to promote healthy lifestyles in Guyana. And healthy lifestyles don't necessarily mean health. It means overall healthy individuals. And under that purport, we have a voting election type civic participation forum, and that we developed the Guyanese Women Roundtable to enable us to move the agenda of civic participation forward and having women understand their role in civic participation. Thus, coming up to the elections, we were able to mobilize and have a issue forum in reference to dealing with the issues and garnering what is the problem? Why are we having this problem? Why aren't you voting? Why are you so disillusioned about the things that you need to do to change around the way people see a vote?
So essentially through the Guyanese Women's Roundtable,
yes,
which ties in with yours, Marcia, or with your NGO. You also have an NGO. Could you tell us a little about that?
Well, I was invited here by the Guyanese Women's Roundtable to talk about my experiences in the U.S., and 2 are particularly relevant. I mentioned I'm a voting rights lawyer who does a lot of voting engagement, but I also belong to the Black Women's Roundtable in Guyana, in the U.S., where we work on issues relevant to African American women. And what is really important to distinguish, I think, is women's issues are not just limited to what is good for women. We're the caretakers in our society. Women here in Guyana are 50% of the population. We are workers, we are educators, we're engaged in the society. And so it's about how can we collectively, as women, help our societies be the best that they can be. So one of the things that I've been invited here to do is to talk at a fundraiser that we're having to compare best practices that I've learned in my work in the U.S. and to humbly offer recommendations based on that experience about how what I've learned in the U.S. can be adapted here.
When you say best practices, could you expand on that a little bit?
So it's lessons learned from the work doing voter education and research and engaging in the U.S. So, for example, one of the things that we do in the U.S., and actually before you can move a lot of things in the U.S., is collecting the data and having the survey and talking to the community and finding out, okay, what are the issues you care about? Not approaching it from, I'm coming in to tell you what your problem is and what you need to do, but engaging in a dialogue with the community about what are the issues you care about, and then what is the infrastructure that we need to put in place to help to address those issues. Guyana does not have the same culture of advocacy and engagement with election officials as we do in the United States, but what could be the best starting point to have that discussion? And particularly around election time, that's the time when those who want to be in office are particularly listening to the people and are actually seeking out to engage people. So using that opportunity to start having that conversation, and then to start brainstorming about after the elections, when you find out who is going to be in the government, who's going to be focusing on the issues, what is the best way to engage them within the system we have to move forward. So just some of those ideas I'd be sharing.
Okay, Dr. Dawn, going from the surveys, identification of issues, infrastructure before or existing, and infrastructure after, we've within that context the question or the issue of accountability. How does accountability, how do you get or you establish a framework for accountability relating, as Marcia said, the issues with the performance, regardless of who is the government? Because I'm assuming this is something in terms of infrastructure that does not exist right now that you want to see in place and workable. So address the accountability question.
What the Guyana Roundtable has been developing is basically a scorecard way of where we will be able, where we hope to meet with whoever is elected to Parliament. What we want to do is a post issue session with the Parliament that has been selected to serve the people of Guyana, and begin some conversation surrounding the issues that we were presenting all along through the election process, with our scorecard having the way that we can measure and having the conversation about the issues and how they feel about the issues, and what are the steps within the first 100 days that they're planning to address those issues, and constantly in a rotation fashion have the somewhat of a working engagement with the parliamentarians who have the ear of the leader of the parties and the government to further the agenda of what the issues are that is facing the majority of persons, i.e. women in Guyana and the youths, and have them be accountable to us in reference to these issues. And one of the things we will be doing is continuous training and education of why is it important to do advocacy, why is it important to engage after the election, why is it important to make our elected officials accountable to us for what they said they are going to do. For example, there are manifestos that's been thrown out, and now the manifesto said they'll do A, they'll do B, right? So now we will begin to process the manifestos against what are the issues that we have envisioned and got from the surveys and the interviews that really concern the women in Guyana, and begin to start addressing those issues from a ground level.
Now let me repeat that a little bit to see if I can understand it clearly. You have a scorecard, and I'm going to simplify it and sort of visualize it. You have a scorecard and you have the 10 issues that you talked about.
5.
Oh, well, 5 major ones.
Yeah,
but
10.
Let's say 10. And there may be others that come up. And as soon as the new parliament is put in place, an advocacy group of women gets together and discusses these specific issues with criteria that indicate whether actions are being successful, whether issues are being addressed or not addressed. and then set up a schedule of meetings that were prearranged, like once a month.
Yeah.
For example, I'm just using this as an example, to meet with the responsible officials so that you can have a dialogue with them on how they are doing with respect to the criteria that you've established. In other words, if you said you're going to have clinics set up in 6 communities, and if they agree that that is something they will do, and they come back after 3 months and find out they've done nothing, then that's a measure of accountability.
Yes.
And this is the kind of thing you're talking about.
Yes, exactly.
Some very specific,
measures
measurable
in reference to the issues that we...
But not general issues. Not you have a list of issues,
Right.
you have criteria, and then you're able to monitor and measure whether they have achieved certain milestones or not.
Yeah, there are specific issues based on what the Guyanese public, the women, have said to us, either in the survey or in the interviews, that affect them repeatedly, continuously, and it doesn't matter whichever region it was, these issues keep coming up over and over.
But the format is the same, the principle is the same. Accountability in a measurable way, based on frequently pre-scheduled, pre-arranged meetings.
Yeah.
All right. And not just talking. We're not just sitting down and talking. You have a scorecard.
No, we have a scorecard. We have a scorecard.
Okay.
And remember, because the electoral process is a process that's for 5 years. So within those 5 years, there must be some action, right? Because there's another electoral term that's beginning to happen. So we're always working within this 5 years to see progress based on what we have agreed upon, you, the government, and us, the people, based on the information that we want to see happen, what you said you'll do. So there's an exchange.
Right. Exactly. Marcia, could you fill in any blanks there?
Yes, what I would add is that it's important not just to identify the problem and to when you're having the conversation with the elected officials, but to talk to the community about what kind of solutions they would like to see enacted. Sometimes there needs to be an education about whether those solutions fit into the legal framework within the country. Is it possible? And if it's not within our laws, do we first have to enact a particular law to get to that solution? Is it something that has to be law driven, or is it an administrative process? Can it be part of an existing program? So being prepared to talk through with the community what solution they would like to see and how that solution fits into the legal and legislative infrastructure that's in the country. And by doing that, you are also empowering the community. So when I have a conversation now, as I go in to talk to the elected official, I'm not just saying this is the problem and they can tell me anything. It's grounded in a knowledge about how the system works. And I'm there not just to ask for a helping hand, but to propose what I think that help should look like. And so when I'm holding you accountable, it is really a dialogue and an exchange we're having, not just a request and waiting for an answer, but you're also involved and engaged in the governance of your country. And I think it's really important to build that infrastructure, particularly around young people. So when you're facing that cynicism about why should I get involved, it doesn't matter what I do anyway, having that information, information is power, and working with young people about how to use that information to engage elected officials, then you're really building a strong infrastructure within your country, not just for now or for the next election, but for the future.
Talk about this, Doctor, in the context of what we spoke about earlier, the culture of engagement. How does this facilitate, how does this encourage that culture of engagement, which we don't really have at this point in time?
I think once we begin to have these conversations and the stakeholders begin to feel invested in that we're listening to them.
Who are the
And
stakeholders?
the stakeholders are the people of Guyana, as well as the elected officials, the candidates, the government. They're all stakeholders. But getting them intricately involved in the process from ground up, where we ask them, what are the issues, right? Then we have them involved in, okay, these are the issues. What do you perceive the solutions are to these issues? How can we help bring a solution to this issue, in if it's water, electricity, whatever the issue is, the domestic abuse, domestic violence, and are there adequate laws? Okay, so we understand there are laws on the books that take care of that. Now, what is the issue? What is the solution to the example, the police not adhering to the laws or the protocol in reference to the domestic abuse charging persons, etc., etc., right? So what is the solution to this? How do we manage it? And having the stakeholders weigh in on how do we manage this, and what do we do to accomplish the goal that you want to accomplish, the reduction of domestic violence in our society.
Okay, Marcia, follow through with that in terms of how would you see a similar situation in the U.S. context, in your environment? I mean, relate the Guyanese situation with the situation. You pick an example of what works best for you.
Yeah, so I would say, one of the issues that has really bubbled up now in the U.S. is police violence. And police violence particularly against minorities. And we know about Ferguson and Michael Brown being shot by the police. And the young people of that community use that as an opportunity to rise up and speak out about a lot of the indignities and the injustices that they're facing there in the community. And it just so happened that there was an election coming up for the city council. You have a predominantly African American city. They weren't represented on the city council. So this, the awareness of the issue of police violence and the attention that it brought to Ferguson and the engagement with the young people resulted in them deciding we want certain people to run for the city council because this election is now coming up. We're going to use the protest also to do voter registration. And before, there was very limited turnout by African Americans for the local city council elections. The election turnout doubled, and the African American community was able to elect 3 people. The 3 African Americans to the city council. And it's an example of taking advantage of what was a very awful situation to move their desires, their legislative and electoral desires forward. But in order to be able to do that, there were infrastructure and resources in place to provide. You had the media spotlight, and now I can speak about the issues about what's happening in my community. I can engage my community. I can bring the resources about voter registration and voter education, and I can get to this result of now having 3 Americans on the city council.
3 African Americans. 3
African Americans on the city council. But it doesn't stop there, because now there has to be that engagement with the members of the city council. So here in Guyana, it is doing an assessment of where are we in terms of engagement. How can we use situations that come up to further lift up issues? Is there an infrastructure that allows us to be able to do that? And then how can we move that conversation forward? And so there is an assessment, I think, that needs to be done about what is available, what's needed, and what can be done within the context of what we have now, and what are we building towards. What would we like to see that we can have in place to be able to, so folks don't feel disillusioned and paralyzed, but that because you can't just talk to people and say you should get engaged, you should vote, and not provide them the information and the resources that they need in order to be able to do that.
You itching to say something?
Yeah, no, I was thinking as Marcia was
Dawn,
saying that the infrastructure is really important, right? But the way the Women's Roundtable look at it, we'll start off with small steps. In order to make change, you often have to go beyond and trail paths that have never been trailed before. And sometimes you have limited resources, but you build on that limited resource, and you build on the strengths and the weaknesses and the engagements of the community in order to accomplish the goal that you want to accomplish, which overall having persons be engaged. And it's a process, and it's not a one-day process, it's not a two-day process. And we talked earlier, America is 200 years old and Guyana is 50 years old, and America is still experiencing the same problem. So no doubt as we go through the journey, we'll still experience the problems of getting there, but there must be a start to engage our political officials to get into the direction where the people who are the stakeholders of the governance of Guyana is involved in making the decisions and involved in playing a key role in how Guyana is managed.
And if I can add just one more thing, also think about how you can use the diaspora.
Yeah.
To
that's you.
That's me.
That's you.
to engage in that process. You know, Guyana has experienced a tremendous brain drain, but now I think with technology and the world becoming more and more of a global village, and it's not just isolated national borders, when we're thinking about the issues here, also thinking about how we can engage the Guyanese people around the world to participate and help in that process, because we're all, many of us are abroad itching to figure out how we can help.
Itching to figure out how we can help. I remember those words. Talk a little bit more about this, a little bit as specific as you can get, about infrastructure requirements. We use the term generally infrastructure. What specifically do you mean by infrastructure?
Well, when I talk about infrastructure, I talk about the things that we need in reference to space, equipment, and policies, and access to those policies surrounding the movement of engaging persons in the political system, where persons have a right to speak. Persons have a right to engage, and it is as such that they are allowed that right and given an opportunity to be able to do exactly that without fear or without repercussion.
That's the space you're talking
about. The space that needs to be created, as well as the financial stability of an organization or whatever it may be, to be able to further that agenda, to do the things that you need to do. And I don't know, Marcia may have more experience as far as what should the infrastructure in Guyana look like? What are the things that we need? Access to the parliament, access to the leaders, to be able to have the ongoing conversation as to what is it we need to do to make this a better Guyana and increase governance.
I mean, I could just share some of the practices that we use in the U.S. and some of them that are now possible, some that would need to be built.
Infrastructure.
But with infrastructure. But when Dawn is talking about a space, I'm got really literal and thinking about, is there a place within the community where people can get together to talk about issues, and
like a community center,
a community center or a church. Is there a designated place in the community? This is where we're going to meet and talk about issues. And then one of the tricks we learned in the U.S. with engaging communities, if you want people to come, feed them. But we have issues of poverty, we have issues of hunger. How can I, as I'm trying to bring people along to engage in the community, address their immediate needs? In the U.S., it's you know, we've had an economic downturn. People have a lot of different jobs that they need to attend. What is the time that's convenient for you to be able to engage? So it's building that space around the community's needs and providing that information. And then how is the best way for me to get the information that you need to you? You know, for example, in the work that I do, we have a program called Election Protection, which provides assistance to voters on election day who might run into problems. We have an 800 nationwide hotline that voters can call. We have call centers around the country where we have volunteer lawyers who are answering the calls. Okay, we are not prepared to have that type of infrastructure here in Guyana at this point, but what kind of community-based information sharing infrastructure that we can build? Because you know, there's the saying about give a man a fish, he eats for one day, teach a man to fish. You know, he can fish for a lifetime. And then my organizer friends in the States said, teach a man how to organize. And he can really build the community he needs so that everyone gets to eat the fish, right? And it's not just one person eating the fish. And so one of the things I love about Guyana is that we're very much a community-based culture. And how do we take advantage of that within our culture to have these conversations, not just here in Georgetown, but in communities across the country, and begin reinforcing each other?
Well, just so you know, that is what Coffee 250 committee is about.
Oh, great.
It's about going into communities and trying to establish consciousness in the communities through education. Community by community by community, you know. So it fits. So the infrastructure is, and I think we don't usually recognize that we in Guyana are particularly well suited to development of any type because of the historical background of the village movement, for example, how African communities got together. We have not really used that in recent times to the benefit of the African community. And what you're saying is this is really the kind of thing that is the nucleus of whether it's voter education or community football or whatever it is, the health programs. Because you have within each community, you always have a community center. As part of the way the African villages were set up, they built the church, they built the school, and they built the community center. You know, and so there's already sort of an infrastructure. Talk about youth now. How do you get? What has been your experience with youth involvement? And we talked about mentorship. We talked about lack of mentorship. Lack of mentors that have a vision of what the future might be. Also the opposing forces of the culture, which tend to shy away, and not shy away, but actually force people into other directions other than things that are good for them. Address the youth mentorship vision aspect.
I think it's extremely important that the elders understand that youth need mentorship and coaching, and it's also important that youths understand that they need mentorship and coaching, and we partner with each other to be able to do that. So the youths that we have been talking to and working with are pretty much in Guyana disillusioned. They're unhappy. They're don't have trust. They believe that it doesn't matter what they say or what they voted, it does not count. They believe that nobody will listen, and they believe that the grown-ups will do whatever they want to do. So why are they wasting time to go and vote at the polls? Because nothing is going to change. They still won't get a job, etc., etc. So now it's on the elders of the society to ensure that they explain, they try to have them understand and learn from a very young age. We don't start teaching civic participation at election time when somebody's about to go to vote. We need to start doing this from the school age. We need to take our children when we go to the polls and explain to them what it all means to go to the polls. So by the time they get to 16, 17, and 18 and ready to vote, they can articulate the issues that they vote. They can understand it. They can have dialogue. They can have engagement into why am I voting? Why is it necessary to vote? So they will not be as confused as most of our youths are now. And instill in them their voice. What is it their voice is able to do? How do their voice change the direction in which a society moves? And we have to also understand that the youth make up the largest percentage of persons in Guyana. So therefore they have the power, and they have to understand that they really have the power in the decision making as to who gets elected. Basically, once they are registered to vote and they go out and vote, they really actually have the power to determine who wins the election based on their numbers, right? So therefore they have their agenda as to what needs to be done that meets their needs, and how they go about negotiating that with their candidates based on the conversation and based on the engagement of what is it you're going to do for me, our community, and what is it we accept. These are the solutions, etc., etc. But that engagement has to take place, and the youths, in order to be able to be ready for that engagement, we have to mold them and bring them along, not mold them to tell them which party to vote for as much as mold them in the direction to think and understand why it's important for them to understand governance, understand civic participation, understand the issues, and understand being motivated enough to address those issues in a context where it will benefit their community and they would see improvement within their community, within their lives. For example, having a university may be one of the key issues, and being able to have the education necessary to compete in a global society in which we are, right? So those are some of the things that they may be interested in, and that's the interest that they need to reflect upon the elected officials.
Well, what I would say, we have to be willing to listen to them and to allow them to play a role in the solutions and what they want to see. I know, as I guess I'm now in the elder category.
Not yet. Don't rush.
Okay. But we like to say, well, we've had the experience and we know best. But we did not experience the world at their age as they're experiencing now, and they're engaged in a very different way than we are, or we were at their age. And so I think being willing to listen and to get their perspectives and their point of view, and I know within the Guyanese culture it's challenging to give a voice to young people, but they need to know that their voice and their opinions are valued. And then what we need to have is a collaboration about how we address the issues that they need, that they want to have addressed. And we need to be willing to acknowledge where we have fallen down, or what supports we don't have in place to get them where they need to go. And then we need to think about how we get there with them, because you do need to have the institutions and the willingness in place to address the issues that are important to the young people. And when you're thinking about the future and excuse me, and where do you want them to where do you want to help them to get to? So, you know, an example using the American experience is social media. You know, a lot of young people in the U.S. get their information through social media. And they
what specifically are you talking about?
So when
social media.
When I say social media, I mean they're on Twitter, they're on Snapchat, they're
Facebook.
They're on Instagram, and they get their information in visual ways. They get their information in bite-sized pieces. They communicate with each other through these medium. And so when we think about how we reach young people, we also need to think about what are the ways in which they get their information and work with them to access those medium and to shape what the message is going to look like, so that you're helping them to helping them to facilitate having the conversation, rather than us just sharing our wisdom and telling them what we think they should do.
Wait a minute. Which means I can't see anymore. I am the older chap. You know, you have to listen to how I'm saying it and do everything the way I think you ought to say it.
No.
I mean, that doesn't work anymore.
No, that doesn't work anymore. We have to allow
Did it
them. We
work
have to.
then?
It didn't work then. We have to listen to them. We have to be able to have them express what is it will make a difference in their lives. Because remember, we're shaping them for tomorrow. They're shaping for tomorrow. So therefore, we have to empower them to be able to make the decision, think outside of the box, and envision a tomorrow for them, because and them to take care of the elders. So they have to envision.
It's in our self-interest.
It's in our self-interest. They have to vision a tomorrow, and how they, if we tell them about the tomorrow, it won't necessarily be a tomorrow that either us or them would want to be in.
So basically what we're saying is all of this, and how this fits into voting, because this is one of the tools of empowerment. This is how they implement, how they utilize one of their tools is through voting. To manage, to control the environment. It's a very and your example of Ferguson was a very tangible one, and it's recent because they were able to elect 3 city councilmen, African American city councilmen, that could now articulate what their interests are. Prior to that, they had no voice.
Exactly.
So this is the voice of the voting that we're talking about. So this is very good. Tell us a little bit more, and share a little bit more about the visioning part of it. The visioning part of it. Where I'm coming from, why that is so critical. And you mentioned something earlier. We really have to communicate with the youth in order to and teach them to think. A lot of people say that. What does that really mean? Teach them to think. How do you teach somebody to think?
I see
Give
it.
an example, if you can, so you could make it as.
I see it as an educational process where you allow young people to come up with their imaginary way of addressing issues or problems, however they see fit. To be able to solve a problem, solve an issue. For example, having a job. You come up and you have no jobs, but a young person may say, well, I can think of making a product to be able to make money, and this is the way I want to go about doing this product, but I don't have the resources to do this product, and this is what I think I can do with this product, etc., etc. Guyana is a growing democracy. Guyana has many opportunities for entrepreneurship and stuff and things like that. So having young people go outside of the realm of working for somebody is one way. Use the resources in which they have available to them throughout Guyana to positively think of a way that this resource can bring investments into Guyana, as well as have employment. Because you think of a project that you may want to do, and in that process you may be able to have 4 or 5 of your friends come together to realize that venture. So that's employment there, creation of employment there, even though it's 4 to 5, and we continue spreading that initiative, which really becomes a great big initiative. And usually oftentimes we see persons think about, I see on somebody has thought about a baby bottle that comes strapped onto the top of a hook that a baby can hook without and the mother can use the hands doing different things, and it's selling like crazy all over the world, right? So there are simple things that people can come up, give them an opportunity to think without us telling them what to think.
Okay.
You know, that gets very much in line with what I was thinking. Instead of telling them what to do, you know, we need to stop telling young people what to do. An example that came to mind when you asked the question and really helped me as a mother, because you know we love to tell our children what to do, is on the soccer field or football. I'm in Guyana now, I could say football. And one of my girls plays football, and she's the coach. Instead of telling them what to do, he says, okay, I want you to get the ball to the goal and use these 2 cones. And they have to figure out the path. So, you know, it's finding out what do you want to do and how do you think you're going to get there, and to brainstorm with them about how they get there, and think about, okay, what are the resources that you're going to need, and that's my role, to see if I can provide those resources and to help their path, but they're the ones who are moving and getting to where they want to go, because they have a font of knowledge and information and skills available to them that we want to encourage them to use. Because if we're just telling someone what to do, we're not helping them to provide for themselves and to move forward.
And they also have the image in their minds of exactly where they want to be, but they necessarily may not have the wherewithal to get where they want to be, but they oftentimes feel stifled because we're telling them what to do, and so they feel like their initiative or their thought process that they have in mind is not good enough.
So we need to foster more self-assurance, and just be the coach, so that they can think for themselves. And what about mistakes? How are mistakes handled?
Mistakes are essential.
Mistakes are essential. The best thing you can do is make mistakes.
But the important thing is you have to learn from
the mistakes.
But it's hard to move forward without making mistakes, and we have to be willing to make mistakes.
One thing I've heard a long time ago about the nature of mistakes, and one of the things that has kept a lot of the African society back is that we have tended to portray our mistakes as a character flaw. In other words, if I make a mistake, man, you black people can't do things like this, you know. It becomes a character flaw, as opposed to it's a mistake. Chalk it up as a mistake, learn from it, and move forward. So I think, so I think it's very important for our young people to understand that. That once you're moving forward, you are going to make mistakes. The idea is to learn from those mistakes, get
make
support,
some more mistakes,
and keep moving forward. The only person who does not make a mistake is a person who does nothing. And who does not vote, because if you just sit down and then everybody's thinking for you, and
everybody's making the decisions for you,
and they're making their mistakes,
speaking for you, and they're making mistakes for you.
And you don't have a voice. Is there anything else, ladies, that we can share in the last 2 minutes that we have?
It's a great pleasure being here, and I hope that come May 11, voters go out and vote early. Look at the issues that the portfolios, the manifestos talk about, and think about becoming involved in the direction in which you want your country to go. It's in your hands to decide where that you want your country to go. Take control of it and listen to the issues, and don't stop there. Remember that there has to be a follow-up.
Exactly. I would just say that I'm really happy to be here at this exciting time. We're on the cusp of an election. We're on the cusp of our 50th anniversary. And one of the best things I think we can do as a young democracy is to keep working at
To
it.
keep
We
working.
can't give up on it.
Exactly. Well, there you have the final words from our guests, Dr. Dawn Stewart and Marcia Johnson-Blanco, Esquire. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And on behalf of Coffee 250, thank you, viewers. Until next time, I'm Ng-A-Qui.